You have a live stream going. Case number 21CF, 1848, State of Wisconsin versus Darrell Brooks. Matter is tabbed to Judge Boren. Appearance by the state, please.
Good morning, Commissioner Sue Epper, Leslie Basie, and Zach Wichello appearing for the state of Wisconsin.
Morning. Mr. Brooks.
Attorneys Anna Keys and Jeremy Perry on behalf of Mr. Brooks, who is in person.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Brooks. We are here. I think we have some housekeeping to do, so we have a number of people in our courtroom. Last time we talked about the level of decorum that is expected. Emotions are going to be running high. Please do as well as you did last time. I really appreciated that. I know the court system does as well. So I'd ask that if you are having trouble with what you're hearing, please step outside. There are victim witness people from the DA's office that can assist you. Any one of the deputies that you see outside can assist you as well. So pursuant to Judge Boren's, the trial court's general order, we do have a pool camera. We have a news camera or a news feed through the radio, and also a still camera. Nobody is allowed beyond those people to record this either audio or visually. So if you do have your cell phones out, I would ask that you put them away. It's not permitted per the judge's order. There's a number of other media outlets here. Any media that is going to be recording or doing otherwise must be down in the jury assembly room to effectuate that. So with that, we have some housekeeping to do. We have a second amended criminal complaint that's been filed on the case. Who's going to be lead counsel today for the defense?
I am.
So Attorney Keys, has Mr. Brooks received a copy of the criminal complaint or the second amended criminal complaint, and will he waive its reading?
Yes.
And sir, I'm going to walk through these. I intend to go through each, but what I'll do is package each one with what it's the charges, what the penalties are, but then reference who the victim is. Any objection by the defense to that? Or would you like me to read each one of them separately?
I don't think each count needs to be read separately. We also have reviewed with Mr. Brooks the charging language of all of the new counts, and we are waiving any reading of anything.
Okay, thank you. I think pursuant to the statute, have to review this with Mr. Brooks. Mr. Brooks, we talked about counts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 the last time we met. There's now been additional charges, as you know, filed in the second amended criminal complaint charge. Count 6 charges you with first-degree intentional homicide, use of a dangerous weapon. That's regarding victim F. That is a matter that carries a maximum possible penalty of sentence to life imprisonment. That may be increased by not more than 5 years due to the penalty enhancer. Counts 7 through 67 all charge you individually with first-degree reckless endangering safety, use of a dangerous weapon. Each of those are standalone charges. Each of those have the same maximum possible penalty. That is a fine of not more than $25,000, imprisonment for not more than 12 years and 6 months or both. Each of them has an enhancer penalty, use of a dangerous weapon, that could increase that penalty by not more than 5 years. That's for each one of the counts between 7 and 67. Count 7, and all these are involving the same date and location, Sunday, November 21st, 2021, on Main Street in the city of Waukesha, Waukesha County, Wisconsin. Count 7 has a victim listed as victim G. Count 8, victim H. Count 9, victim I. Count 10, victim J. Count 11, victim K. Count 12, victim L. Count 13, victim M. Count 14, victim N. Count 15, victim O. Count 16, victim P. Count 17, victim Q. Count 18, victim R. Count 19, victim S. Count 20, victim T. Count 21, victim U. Count 22, victim V. Count 23, victim W. Count 24, victim X. Count 25, victim Y. Count 26, victim Z. Count 27, victim double A. Count 28, victim double B. Count 29, victim double C. Count 30, victim double D. Count 31, victim EE. Count 32, victim FF. Count 33, victim GG. Count 34, victim HH. Count 35, victim II. Count 36, victim JJ. Count 37, victim KK. Count 38, victim LL. Count 39, victim MM. Victim NN. Count 41, victim OO. Count 42, victim PP. Count 43, victim QQ. Count 44, victim RR. Count 45, victim SS. Count 46, victim TT. Count 47, victim UU. Count 48, victim VV. Count 49, victim WW. Count 50, victim XX. Count 51, victim YY. Count 52, victim ZZ. Count 53, victim AAA. Count 54, victim BBB. Count 55, victim CCC. Count 56, victim DDD. Count 57, victim EEE. Count 58, victim FFF. Count 59, victim GGG. Count 60, victim HHH. Count 61, victim III. Count 62, victim JJJ. Count 63, victim KKK. Count 64, victim LLL. Count 65, victim MMM. Count 66, victim NNN. Lastly, count 67, victim OOO. All of those, sir, again, charge you with first-degree reckless endangering safety, use of a dangerous weapon. It's important you know who the alleged victims are in each of those matters. Each of those matters, again, carry with them individually a maximum possible penalty of a fine of not more than $25,000 imprisonment for not more than 12 years and 6 months or both. And again, because of the penalty enhancer for use of a dangerous weapon, that may be increased on each count by not more than 5 years. And again, all of those are regarding Sunday, November 21st, 2021 on Main Street in the city of Waukesha, Waukesha County, Wisconsin. Then turning to counts 68 through 73. Count 68 through 73 individually charges you with hit and run resulting in death. Each of those counts carry with them the same maximum possible penalty. That is, for each individual count, a fine of not more than $100,000, imprisonment for not more than 25 years or both. And there's a revocation of your driving privileges if you should happen to be found. Each of those counts reference an incident that occurred Sunday, November 21st, 2021 on Main Street in the city of Waukesha, Waukesha County, Wisconsin. Count number 68 has victim A, count number 69, victim B, count 70, victim C, count 71, victim D, count 72, victim E, count 73, victim F. Again, all of those are individually charged. That is the maximum possible penalty for each of those. Counts 74 and 75 charge you with felony bail jumping. And referencing November 21st, 2021 on Main Street in the city of Milwaukee, Waukesha County, Wisconsin. Each of those charges carry with them the same maximum possible penalty. That is a fine of not more than $10,000, imprisonment for not more than 6 years or both. Then we run into 2 misdemeanors. I will advise you, sir, that on any felony, you have the right to a preliminary hearing. Of course, you have the right to counsel. Counts number 76 and 77 charge you with misdemeanor battery, domestic abuse assessment attaching. Count number 76 references an incident that allegedly occurred on Sunday, November 21st, 2021 at Freeman Park in the city of Waukesha, Waukesha County, Wisconsin. It's alleged that you caused bodily harm to victim PPP. That is a matter that carries with it a maximum possible penalty of a fine of not more than $10,000, imprisonment for not more than 9 months or both. Count number 77 references an incident that occurred on November 20th, 2021 at Frame Park in the city of Waukesha, Waukesha County, Wisconsin. where allegedly you caused bodily harm to victim PPP. Again, that carries with it a maximum possible penalty of a fine of not more than $10,000, imprisonment for not more than 9 months or both. I have reviewed a copy of that criminal complaint, the second amended criminal complaint. I will find that probable cause is stated to each of the charges that have been reviewed today. Counts, I already found probable cause on counts 1 through 5, but for the purposes of today's proceedings, I am finding probable cause on the second amended criminal complaint as to each of the counts 1 through 77 of the criminal complaint. And so are we prepared to proceed to a preliminary hearing, Ms. Keys?
We are.
Okay, thank you. So if we would, one of the, we'll address, and please don't let me forget, the second amended victim witness identification key along with any modifications to bail that need to address that or any other items that we may take up. But why don't we proceed to the preliminary hearing? So if the state wishes to call their first witness.
Yes, Commissioner, thank you. The state calls Detective Tom Casey.
I know the defense is also requesting sequestration of any other state.
Attorney Opper, are you anticipating calling any other witness?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
Swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes. Detective, if you could have a seat, state your first and last name, spell it for the record, and then Attorney Opper could take it from there.
Thomas Casey, C-A-S-E-Y,
And how are you employed, sir?
as a detective for the City of Waukesha Police Department,
How long have you worked in law enforcement?
over 24 years.
I'd like to direct your attention to the date of November 21, 2021. Were you on duty that afternoon, sir?
Yes, it was.
And what was your assignment?
Traffic control position for the Waukesha Christmas Parade.
And as a traffic control officer, how were you dressed?
I was wearing a police jacket that had Waukesha Police on each shoulder. I also had a knit cap on that said police on the front of it. And I had a traffic safety vest on that said police on the front and rear of the vest.
Okay, so you would consider yourself in uniform that day.
Yes, it was.
And the parade takes place where, sir?
The staging area is between Baxter Street and East Main on White Rock Avenue. The start is on White Rock and Main Street, and it continues down westbound on Main Street into West Avenue, and then it turns eastbound on Wisconsin Avenue and ends at Cutler Park.
All of these locations you're describing are in the city of Waukesha, county of Waukesha, state of Wisconsin?
Yes, they are.
Okay. And you said that you were assigned traffic control. What does that mean?
I was assigned to keep vehicular traffic out of the area and just allow the people that were in the parade to traverse on the roadway.
I assume there's multiple police officers assigned to traffic control.
Yes, there were.
Do you know about how many officers were working this parade?
There were officers, reserve officers, and some community police officers that were assigned. I would estimate about 30.
All in uniform of some degree?
Yes.
About how many units or groups were participating in the parade?
There's approximately 100 groups, with each group containing multiple participants.
Okay. And how about spectators? About how many spectators attend this event?
I would estimate there was thousands of people there to watch the parade.
Okay. The total length of the parade that you described from basically the beginning at White Rock down to West Avenue, what's that approximate distance?
About 9/10 of a mile.
Okay. And aside from the beginning and the end, the majority of the parade goes down Main Street, correct?
Correct.
And that's an area that contains multiple businesses,
Yes.
and safe to assume spectators were lined up on the side of the street, on both sides of the street,
Yes.
as you would typically see at a parade, people sitting on blankets or standing and lining the streets to watch a parade.
Correct.
Okay. Aside from the police officers and the reserve officers who were present to assist with traffic control, was there any barricades or signs that were used to notify motorists as to the closing of the road?
Yes, all the intersections had squad cars and barricades that were blocking off the streets so vehicles could not drive down them.
Okay. And do you recall what time the parade started?
4 p.m.,
What time did you close the road, the street?
3:30 p.m.
Okay. So after 3:30, no one was allowed, no vehicular traffic was allowed down Main Street, correct?
Correct. Actually, it was a little bit earlier. I'd say it was about 3:15 when we closed off the parade route. Initially, the area that I was assigned to on White Rock Avenue, we closed that down at 1 p.m. because that was the staging area for the parade. So between Baxter Street and Main Street, there was no cars allowed on there after 1 p.m.
Okay.
And then the rest of the route, a little after 3 p.m., they started to close down and not allow traffic on there.
Okay. Now I want to direct your attention to the time of approximately 4:35 p.m. that day. What happened at that time?
I overheard on the radio that squads were dispatched to the area of Frame Park for a reported fight that involved somebody with a knife.
Okay. Did you respond to that?
I did not.
You maintained your post
Yes, I did.
and continued to direct traffic.
Yes.
At some point, did you observe a vehicle that drew your attention?
Yes, I did.
What kind of vehicle was it?
It was a red Ford Escape.
And what was it about the vehicle that drew your attention to it?
Well, first of all, the parade route was closed down. There was no vehicles allowed on the parade route. But initially I heard a horn beeping from the area north of my location, and that's what my initial focus was drawn to.
Okay. And from the best of your knowledge, was it that red Ford Escape that was honking its horn?
Yes, it was.
Okay. You were able to visually observe the vehicle at that point?
Yes, I was. I started walking towards the center of the road when I heard the horn. So I was actually in the center of the roadway in between parade participants when the vehicle first appeared out of the parade participants.
Okay. So as you've just described, the parade's underway, correct?
Yes, it is. It had already started and some of the parade had actually finished already at that point.
Okay. And there's multiple units traversing in the roadway to participate in the parade?
Yes.
Okay. When you saw the SUV, what did you do?
I first stepped in front of the SUV, put my hands up and was yelling for the vehicle to stop.
Okay. Did the vehicle stop?
It did not.
Were you positioned directly in front of the vehicle?
Yes, I was.
And what happened?
The vehicle continued driving into me. I'd say it was a slow speed at that point. Eventually the vehicle made contact with me and I was pounding on the hood, yelling for it to stop, which it did not.
Could you see anybody inside the vehicle?
At that point, I could not see the person real clearly, but as the vehicle continued pushing through me, I was, my position changed to the side of the vehicle where I was directly outside the driver's side window and I could see inside of the window and I could see the driver very clearly.
Were there any other occupants in the vehicle at that time?
I did not see any.
Okay. And the driver of that vehicle, do you see that person present in the courtroom here today?
Yes, I do.
Could you identify him, please?
He's sitting at the defense table dressed all in red.
You know the name of that person?
Darrell Brooks.
And you positively identify Mr. Brooks as the driver of the vehicle at this point?
Yes, I do.
Okay. As he drove past you in the vehicle, did you make any further effort to stop the vehicle?
I pounded on the driver's side of the window and continued to yell at the person to stop.
Did the vehicle stop?
It did not.
Were there parade participants in the street at this time?
Yes, there were.
Okay. Where did you see the vehicle go?
The vehicle continued westbound on Main Street.
And could you see any activity involving the truck at that point?
Yes, initially I began chasing after the vehicle to try to get it to stop. And as I was following behind the vehicle, I could see it was on the north side of the roadway, at times beeping its horn. Eventually its speed increased where I could not keep up with it. And then it continued further west on Main Street.
So you were chasing the vehicle on foot?
Yes.
Okay. Trying to run behind it and catch up?
Correct.
Okay. Did you see the vehicle actually strike any persons at that point?
not in person.
Okay. At some point, did you lose visual contact with the vehicle?
Yes, I did.
And about what area was that?
Probably just past Barstow Street.
Okay. Do you know if there were other officers along the route that took any effort to stop the vehicle?
Multiple officers.
Had you alerted the other officers to what was happening?
Yes, I broadcast on the radio that a vehicle had entered the parade route, specifically a Ford Escape, and that we needed squad's emergency response to try to stop it.
Okay. Are you aware of other officers attempting to stop the vehicle further west on Main Street?
Yes, I am.
Did the vehicle stop for those officers?
It did not.
Those officers were in full police uniform?
Yes,
Are you specifically aware of Officer Butrin also essentially standing in front of the vehicle and putting his arms up and telling the driver to stop?
yes,
Did the driver stop for Officer Butrin?
he did not.
Okay. At this point, you personally did not observe any further conduct with the vehicle once it got out of your sight, correct?
Correct.
But subsequently, you were assigned as the lead investigator in this case, is that correct?
Yes, it was.
And in that capacity, have you witnessed multiple video recordings of the activity involving the SUV driven by Mr. Brooks as it proceeded down Main Street?
Yes, I have.
About how many videos were recovered by the police department?
We have 65 different files, each containing multiple videos.
And what were the sources of these videos?
Citizens, businesses, some city cameras that we have.
Okay. And did the recordings capture the path of travel for the SUV throughout the length of Main Street?
Yes, it did.
Okay. And on those, have you observed those video recordings, sir?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Do you believe they were true and accurate depictions of what happened that afternoon?
Yes, they are.
Okay. And in addition to the videos, multiple law enforcement officers have attempted to interview many victims and witnesses who were present that day, correct?
Correct.
Is the information in the recordings consistent with the information you obtained from these citizen witnesses and victims?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Tell us what you saw on the videos as the SUV traveled down Main Street, please.
Initially, as the vehicle was traveling on Main Street, I would say between White Rock and Barstow Street, the vehicle stays on the north side of the roadway. As it's driving, it's beeping its horn, slowing down. Once it crosses Barstow Street, the vehicle continues driving at a faster speed. It increases its speed, and it begins to do a zigzagging motion through the crowd. At some point.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify. When you say crowd, are you talking about the participants in the middle of the street or the spectators on the side of the road?
The participants in the parade.
Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
As it's between Barstow and Broadway, the vehicle zigzagging through the crowd, hitting people, running people over. And then as it approaches Clinton Street, the vehicle increases its speed even more. The vehicle is zigzagging through the crowd where there's no vehicles, and it appears that the vehicle's intentionally aiming for people. At one point in the video, you can see the vehicle running over people. At one point, there's someone on the hood of the car where the vehicle jams on its brakes, appears to have the person come off the hood of the car, and then continues driving and drives over that person. As it gets to the 400 block, it hits another group of people and then continues driving westbound.
Okay. In total, about how many people did the Waukesha Police Department identify as having been directly struck by the vehicle as it drove down the roadway?
We're at about 61 at this point.
Okay. Did some of those people receive fatal injuries?
6 of the people receive fatal injuries.
Of the people that did not lose their life, what was the degree of injury suffered by them? Did it vary?
From some people have I'd say road rash, swelling muscles. But there's some people that have skull fractures, internal injuries, and fractures, multiple fractures.
I just want to briefly go through the various units that were involved in the parade here. It's my understanding that the investigation has shown the first person that was struck was participating with the RE/MAX Services First Group. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And that person was in about the 200 block of Main Street.
That is correct.
Was that person directly struck by the vehicle
Yes, she was.
and injured?
Yes,
And that occurred as she was marching in the middle of the street.
yes,
The vehicle then encountered the Waukesha South Band.
yes.
Tell us what you remember about the videos showing the contact with the Waukesha South Band.
The vehicle suddenly swerves to the left, and at that point, it first hits the drum player and continues, and I would say it hits approximately 10 people and runs directly over the top of them, and then turns to the right and starts hitting other people in the parade route.
Okay. Some spectators were injured in this area as well.
Correct.
Okay. These Waukesha South Band members, they would all be teenagers or high school aged kids,
Yes,
and were all 10 people injured to your knowledge?
yes, they were.
Some of them suffering great bodily harm,
Yes,
and all of them were directly in the roadway at the time of this.
yes,
Burris Logistics Group was the next unit, is that correct?
yes,
And was anybody participating in that group injured?
yes. Two people, a mother and daughter.
Okay. They were both directly struck by Mr. Brooks' vehicle?
Yes, they were.
Okay. I believe the Blazers baseball team was then encountered in the area of 264 West Main Street. Does that sound right, sir?
Correct.
And tell us what happened with the Blazers baseball team, please.
The vehicle started to pass on the left. Initially, it made contact with a young child and adult that were pushed between a pickup truck and eventually thrown ahead and hit multiple other participants that were in the center of the roadway.
Okay. Were any members of the Blazers baseball team injured as a result of Mr. Brooks striking them with his vehicle?
Yes, they were.
About how many?
I believe it was 10.
And were there any fatalities associated with the Blazers baseball team?
Yes, there was one.
And that was victim F.
Correct.
And what was the cause of death determined for victim F?
Cranial cerebral traumatic injuries.
The vehicle then encountered the Waukesha Extreme Dance Team, is that correct?
Yes,
And that's in an area known to us as the 5 Points area of downtown Waukesha, correct?
yes.
And that's, what roadways are in that area, sir?
That's where Broadway and Main Street cross. Also, Grand Avenue starts heading south.
Okay. Were any members of the Extreme Dance Team struck directly by Mr. Brooks' vehicle?
Yes, they were.
And were they injured?
Yes, they were.
And they were struck as they walked down the middle of the street, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. At any point in this process, if we've described it so far, does Mr. Brooks stop his vehicle and check on any of these victims?
He does not.
There's about 15 children with the Extreme Dance Team that were injured, is that correct?
Yes,
Struck and injured. The vehicle then continues and encounters the group for Citizens Bank, is that correct?
correct.
And that's in the same area, about the 300 block or just west of the 5 Points area.
Correct.
Was anyone from the Citizens Bank injured?
Yes, there was.
And was that a fatal injury?
Yes, it was.
That would be to victim D.
Correct.
What was the cause of death for victim D determined to be?
Multiple blunt force traumatic injury.
Okay. The vehicle then continues on and encounters the group known as the Milwaukee Dancing Grannies.
Yes,
And that occurs also in the 300 block of West Main Street.
correct.
Did you see video recording of the vehicle striking the dancing grannies?
Yes, I did.
What did you see?
The first granny was hit squarely in the center of the car. She was in the middle of the roadway. The vehicle continued driving. It initially was on the north side of the roadway. It then went to the south side of the roadway and came back to the north side of the roadway. There was no cars in the roadway at that time. It hit multiple people.
When you say cars on the roadway, and I think you had mentioned earlier, like a pickup truck or something, you're talking about cars that were accompanying the parade units, correct?
Correct.
Okay. How many people from the Dancing Grannies unit were killed as a result of Mr. Brooks striking them directly with his vehicle?
4.
And there were 3 other individuals that were injured as a result of this?
Correct.
And cause of death for the 4 individuals participating with the Dancing Grannies was?
Multiple blunt force traumatic injury.
Did the vehicle stop at that point after striking the Dancing Grannies?
It did not.
What happened after the vehicle, Mr. Brooks, cleared the Dancing Grannies?
At one point, you can see the vehicle suddenly slow down, appeared to get somebody off the windshield of the car. There's one citizen witness that said that Mr. Brooks was actually had his head out the window, trying to see around the other people as he was driving.
Was there a gap in the parade at that point?
Yes, there was.
Can you just briefly describe that, please?
It was maybe 100 feet. Sometimes the parade, some groups go a little bit slower or faster than others. After the Dancing Grannies, there's a street to the left that he could have exited on. And then there was a number of groups that were up about 100 feet.
Okay, and they were in the 400 block of West Main Street?
Correct.
Did he then encounter the group known as the Catholic Community of Waukesha?
Yes, he did.
And that was a larger group, correct?
Yes, it was.
Did Mr. Brooks strike several members of that group with his vehicle?
Yes, he did.
A total of about 19 people injured with the Catholic community?
Yes.
Okay. And they were all in the roadway?
Yes, they were.
Aside from the people in the roadway marching in the parade, there were some spectators that were injured in the area of 5 Points, is that correct?
Yes, there were.
And also some others that have been injured west of that, near the area where the Dancing Grannies were struck, correct?
Correct.
After Mr. Brooks went through the Catholic community group, did the video show where he went from there?
Yes, at that point, the roadway curves southbound for a short time until Wisconsin Avenue, and he turned left at that point.
Okay, so he stays on the parade route,
Correct.
and does he encounter an officer in this area of West Avenue?
Yes, he did.
What happened there?
One of our officers saw the vehicle coming at him. This officer was standing directly in the roadway. The vehicle was driving directly at him and forced that officer to discharge his service weapon.
He fired at Mr. Brooks' vehicle?
Yes, he did.
Did he strike the vehicle?
3 times.
Did the vehicle stop?
Did not.
Where did the vehicle go?
Continued southbound. At that point, the roadway turns into West Avenue. He continued for a block and then turned left onto Prospect Avenue.
And were you later able to trace the path of travel for the vehicle after it left the parade route?
Yes, we were.
Where did it go?
The vehicle pulled into a driveway and then through a backyard and ended up at 338 Maple Avenue.
What happened there?
Mr. Brooks got out of the vehicle and began running southbound.
So he abandons the vehicle
Yes,
and now he's on foot.
correct.
Were you able to determine where he went?
He went to multiple different locations. Eventually, he was taken into custody at 553 Elizabeth Street.
Okay. At any point, did Mr. Brooks return to the parade route to check on any of these victims that had been struck?
Never.
At in viewing the video, were there occasions where you observed the vehicle increase its speed along the parade route?
Yes, there was.
Okay. And that was at a time when there were multiple people in the road, correct?
Correct.
Fair to say that from the video that most of the parade participants, because Mr. Brooks was coming up from behind them, were not aware of what was going on.
That is correct.
And it appeared from the video that most of them were struck without even knowing he was approaching them with his car.
Correct.
Just one last matter, Mr. Detective Casey, did we make any effort to determine the functionality of the vehicle after the incident had occurred?
Yes, we have.
What happened?
We had the Wisconsin State Patrol Mechanical Inspection Unit do an inspection on the vehicle while it was at the Wisconsin State Crime Lab.
And what was determined?
It was determined that there is nothing on the vehicle that was defective that would make the vehicle so it would not stop or accelerate. They found that a tie rod end had a little bit of extra play in it, and there was one mismatched tire. Other than that, they did not find anything mechanical wrong with the vehicle.
Okay. And are you aware of the fact that Mr. Brooks was pending on 2 open cases in Milwaukee County at the time of this incident?
Yes, I am.
Are you aware that he had been released on bail in those cases and had been ordered to not commit any further crimes?
Yes, I am.
All right. Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Attorney Keys.
Thank you, Your Honor. So Detective Casey, you indicated on direct examination that there were thousands of people in the area for the parade on that afternoon. Is that correct?
That is my estimate.
You said about 100 entries in the parade completely.
Correct.
About hundreds of participants were participating in the parade, actually walking down the street, correct?
Correct.
And then you said there were thousands of people then spectating in addition to all of the participants, correct?
That is my estimate.
You indicated also a little bit about the route description. So you stated that the staging area is up on White Rock Avenue. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so White Rock was blocked off from some street all the way down through Maine. Is that correct?
I believe that it was blocked off starting at Niagara, which is north of where White Rock School is, where he was initially in the fight with victim PPP.
Okay. And then the parade goes from White Rock onto Maine. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then it continues turning onto Wisconsin Avenue once it gets to the end of that like corner of Main Street, correct?
Correct.
Now, you indicated that there were barricades and squad cars blocking off that street, correct?
What specific street are you talking about?
Blocking off Main Street so that the people can't get onto Main Street from the cross street, correct?
So vehicles can't get on, correct?
Right. And so you indicated, you said the words, I think, squads and barricades, correct?
Correct.
So what does that mean exactly? Were there squad cars actually blocking the cross streets on Main Street?
At different locations, yes.
So was there a squad car at every single cross street?
There should have been, yes. It may not have been directly on the route. Sometimes they position them maybe a block up, so the vehicles can't get to the route, like the street that is like a block away. And then at the street itself, they would have plastic barricades that are about 10 feet long with white and orange on them.
Okay. So there was not necessarily a squad car blocking the cross street, but there was at least an orange and white barrier.
Correct.
And if someone had gone through the orange and white barrier, they would have then confronted a squad that was blocking another street. Is that fair to say?
More than likely, yes.
Now, you indicated that there were lots of spectators and that people were lining the sidewalks. Is that correct?
Yes.
Were there people who were sitting on the street, on the cross streets in front of the barricades as well?
At some of the places, yes.
So that if someone had turned from Main Street onto a cross street, they could have confronted people before getting to a barricade. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
Now, this is a parade, right? So it's loud. There's lots of activity and music and people talking. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
And you were describing before on direct examination that there were some gaps between groups of participants. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So there's different groups of participants who are walking down the street, correct?
Correct.
And there's an amount of space between each group, correct?
I wouldn't necessarily say each group, but some groups, some are closer. Every once in a while, there's a group that's a little bit slower than the other group and it allows a space. So I wouldn't say every group, but some groups there are.
So there are spots where there's nobody walking, correct?
Correct.
And when there are those spots where there's nobody actually walking in the street, there are still spectators on the side of the street, perhaps on the sidewalk, sitting on the curb, things like that, correct?
Correct.
Now, you indicated that you first observed this red Ford Escape on White Rock Avenue, correct?
Correct.
So it was driving toward you as you were standing near the intersection of Main and White Rock, is that right?
Correct.
And then you indicated on direct examination that it had contact with you, correct?
Correct.
You didn't get run over, did you?
I did not.
You then observed that vehicle continue on through Main Street and you described all of that. And then you indicated that it turned southbound onto, does it turn into west there? Or is that still Main
It's
Street?
Main Street for a very short time, and then south of Wisconsin Avenue, it's West Avenue.
Okay. And so the vehicle then did not continue onto Wisconsin Avenue to follow the parade route, correct?
Correct.
The vehicle continued southbound across Wisconsin Avenue, correct?
Correct.
And then you indicated that it turned off onto a different street that I can't remember.
Prospect Avenue.
Prospect, thank you. So it did not continue then following the parade once it got to the end of Main Street, is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, in describing this red Ford Escape, was it an older model, a newer model?
2010.
2010, okay. And when you were having contact with this vehicle, did you notice that the windows were up or down?
I believe that they were all up.
So all the windows were closed on this Ford Escape, is that correct?
Correct.
So you could not see inside through an open window, is that correct? You would have been looking through the glass.
Correct.
The windows were not cracked open at all.
Not that I recall.
And when you were next to the vehicle, you could hear the engine noise, is that correct?
I mean, I don't recall hearing that. I mean, I don't know if it's because everything else that was going on that was excluded, but I don't really recall any noises. I was focused on the vehicle and the driver of the vehicle at that point.
Okay. Now, you indicated that both yourself and officer, is it Butrin or Buttrin?
Yes.
All right, Officer B, is you and Officer B were head on with the vehicle, is that correct?
That is correct.
And you indicated, in fact, that you were eye to eye with the driver of the vehicle, is that correct?
Yes.
And you were right next to the window, and so was Officer Buttrin at a later date, is that correct?
It wasn't a later time. It was probably a few minutes later. I believe he was directly in front of the vehicle. I was in front of the vehicle and then off to its side.
Okay. And regarding the driver, as you saw the driver as it was going past you, he was wearing a gray sweatshirt, correct?
I know that later, but at that time, I was focused on his face. That's all that I saw. I did not see a sweatshirt. I know later that from looking at video and other things, that he was wearing a gray sweatshirt.
Okay. And so when you're looking at his face, you couldn't see his hair at all, correct?
I saw that he had dark hair and he had some facial hair.
Okay, but you couldn't see like the length of his hair, is that correct?
I personally did not see that.
Because it was covered up with a hood, is that correct?
I was just focused on his face. I mean, I was just zeroed in on his face. That's all that I was looking at. It happened very fast. I was very orientated on his face. I do not recall seeing that. It's probably because of things were happening very fast. And I wanted to remember his face, so I was focusing on that.
Okay. And so you indicated on direct examination that you actually stepped in front of the vehicle and pounded on the hood and
Yes.
yelled for the driver to stop, correct?
Yes.
And you did not end up underneath the vehicle, is that correct?
I did not, the vehicle was driving at a slow speed at that time, and I was able to step off to the side as it brushed me past.
And then you witnessed the vehicle driving for how long did you say? Until about Barstow?
That's how far I could see it. The vehicle started to pick up speed, and then it was getting too far away from me. And I decided it was best to go back to my squad car and get into there to try to pursue the vehicle further.
And then Officer Buttrin, you indicated observed the vehicle as well. Do you know how long Officer Buttrin was able to personally observe the vehicle drive?
I mean, it would have been a very short time. I mean, we estimate that the car was on the parade route approximately 3 to 4 minutes. So we're talking a very short amount of time for all of this contact.
Now, you indicated on direct examination that you reviewed video where you were able to see the vehicle then continuing past where you personally observed the vehicle yourself, correct?
That is correct.
And during that time, you saw that the driver did not drive on any sidewalks, is that correct?
That is correct.
The vehicle did not strike any other vehicles, correct?
That is correct.
The vehicle did not try to make any other vehicles get knocked over or roll into other vehicles or parade participants or spectators, correct?
I did not see a knock over any other vehicles.
In fact, there were times when the vehicle almost struck spectators and other parade participants, but didn't hit them, is that correct?
Yes, question again, please.
There was a time when the vehicle was driving in the open lane between the spectators on the sidewalk and the parade participants, correct?
Correct.
And at that time, the vehicle went around rather than striking a small child who was standing in the roadway, correct?
There are times that he avoided people, if that's what you're asking.
Now, as you were observing these videos that you obtained throughout the parade route, is there consistent video of the rear of the vehicle?
What do you mean by consistent?
Can you often see the rear of the vehicle in watching these videos, or are you looking more like down from up or toward the front of the vehicle?
I'd say it's a split between that, but you can see the vehicle, the rear of the vehicle multiple times.
How many times?
I would have to review the reports to know that.
Now, you indicated on direct examination that you observed in these videos each of the 6 people who suffered fatal injuries. Is that correct?
I'd show that the video show 5 of the 6 people being struck.
Okay. And so I guess let's start with on direct examination, Attorney Opper asked you about the first person who was struck, who was with the REMAX group, correct?
Correct.
And so that person was near the area of the 200 block of Main Street, is that correct?
Correct.
And where is that exactly? What's like a,
Between Barstow and Gasper Street.
okay, thank you. And there were other people around that person there were other people in the vicinity of that single person who was struck and killed, correct?
Correct.
And not everybody who was in that vicinity died at that time, correct?
There's only 6 people that died out of hundreds.
Okay. On direct examination, you talked about the Blazers baseball team in the area of 264 West Main Street, correct?
Correct.
And you described that the Ford Escape was on one side of the road and then moved to the other side of the road, correct?
Correct.
In fact, the vehicle swerved around another truck that was in the parade, correct?
It went around a truck.
Okay. And on the left side of that truck was where the parade participants were walking, correct?
There were parade participants on both sides of the truck, but the one that was struck and killed was on the left-hand side of the truck.
Okay, and it was relatively close to the truck, is that correct?
Correct.
You talked about the group of participants in the parade with the Catholic community of Waukesha, correct?
Correct.
And in your direct examination, you indicated that that was a large group of people participating in the parade, correct?
Correct.
And you said that there were about 19 people who were injured as part of that group, correct?
Correct.
None of those people died, correct?
That is correct.
Ultimately, the driver of the vehicle was arrested, you said, somewhere on Elizabeth.
Lieutenant All Mr. Brooks?
Yes,
Yes.
you identified him as Darrell Brooks, correct?
Correct.
And was it you who took him into custody or a different officer?
Other officers?
He spent then a period of time with officers after being arrested, correct?
Correct.
And at that point, one of the officers who spent time with him reported an odor of marijuana about his person, correct?
Correct.
In fact, that officer reported that Mr. Brooks had red, bloodshot, glassy eyes, correct?
Correct.
And he could smell an odor of burnt marijuana on him, correct?
Correct.
And then one of the officers, or a couple of the officers, I think, attempted to interrogate Mr. Brooks. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That was not you, though, correct?
That is correct.
You reviewed reports of those other law enforcement officers who spoke with Mr. Brooks, correct? And those detectives showed Mr. Brooks photos and videos of this incident occurring. Is that correct?
Correct.
While those officers were showing Mr. Brooks photos and videos, he did not want to look at them. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say.
In fact, he would put his head down, correct?
Correct.
He'd turn his head away from the photos and the videos. Is that correct?
Correct.
And at one point, he even begged the law enforcement officer to stop showing them to him, correct?
I believe so.
And lastly, Mr. Brooks indicated to one of the detectives that, quote, "I didn't mean to kill nobody," end quote. Is that correct?
I believe that's a quote.
I have nothing further.
Thank you. Attorney Apper, any redirect?
Just a couple quick follow-up. Detective Casey, on cross-examination, you were asked about, basically, I'm going to summarize what I understood the cross-examination to be. You were asked about scenarios where it was implied that Mr. Brooks couldn't leave the parade route because it was blocked up and down both sides of the street by people at all times, or squads or something like that, correct?
Correct.
In fact, Mr. Brooks could have just simply stopped the car to avoid striking anybody or any object, correct?
Correct.
You were also asked about the fact that you personally were not run over or killed by Mr. Brooks' vehicle, correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, you had the benefit of facing the vehicle head on, seeing it coming and being able to react, correct?
Correct.
The other parade participants that were struck by Mr. Brooks did not have that same vantage point, did they?
That is correct. Speed is also important. That when I saw him, he was doing maybe 5 miles an hour. When he was at the west end of the route, he was maybe going 40 or 50 miles an hour. There's a big difference from where he started to where he ended.
Okay. And fair to say, if he was under the influence of marijuana at the time of these events and operated a vehicle and struck somebody and injured them, that would be a felony offense as well, correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you. I don't have anything else.
Thank you, Detective. You may step down. Thank you. Attorney Hopper, any other witnesses?
No, sir, the state would rest.
Thank you. Attorney Keys, any witnesses?
No witnesses, defense rests.
Thank you. Any argument from the state, please?
The state will move for bind over without argument, Your Honor.
Thank you. Attorney Keys?
Your Honor, defense objects to bind over.
Thank you. Pursuant to what the law is, my decision on whether or not the state has presented sufficient evidence to show that the defendant probably committed a felony or felonies within the jurisdiction of the court. There is ample evidence on all fronts as far as each of the group of counts, the counts 1 through 6, counts 7 through 67, 63 or 68, strike that, through 73, and then the felony bail jumps 74, 75. Each of those were discussed. There is ample evidence on each of those to show, sir, that you probably committed a felony or felonies within the jurisdiction of this court. And based upon that, I am going to bind you over for trial. Attorney Keys, have you received a copy of the information?
Your Honor, we're requesting an arraignment date, and we previously obtained one with Madam Clerk.
Very good. And would you like that in front of this court or the trial court?
I think it's been scheduled in front of this court.
That's fine. So that date, Madam Clerk?
February 11th at 10:15 back here.
All right, and so we do have further housekeeping. There is now a second amended victim witness identification key. I'm modifying the bail bond condition originally set that Mr. Brooks, you may not disseminate any information regarding that particular identification key except to your lawyers. Then I did neglect, and I don't mean to get further into the bail issues, but I did mean to ask at our last bail hearing if Mr. Brooks possesses a passport.
No.
All right, if he does possess a passport, if he does post bail, I am ordering that that be turned over prior to being released to either the sheriff's department or the clerk of court's office, but I understand he does not, according to what he said. So anything else from the state?
Nothing else other than to request the prior condition of bail obviously required Mr. Brooks to have no contact with the victims. We would ask you to extend that to all of the victims now in the second amended victim key.
Thank you, and I unless you want to be heard on that, Attorney Keys?
No.
I am going to grant that motion. So, Mr. Brooks, you may not have contact with any of the victims identified in the second amended victim witness identification key. And with that, unless there's anything else from the state before I get to any comment by any of the victims.
I was going to address that as well, Your Honor. So we are in full compliance with all victim rights notification, Your Honor. There are some victims that are present personally and some that are participating in the live stream viewing, but we have fully complied with them. It's my understanding that no one wishes to address the court on scheduling. At least that was the information I was provided at the beginning of the hearing, and I'm being told at this point that that's still the case. We did confer with the people who are present in the courtroom about that next court date of February 11th. Everybody who's here indicated that was an agreeable date. Certainly, if we find out that there's an objection to that date from others that would require the court taking that issue up, we will alert the court and the defense. But right now, we believe February 11th is agreeable to everyone, and nobody wishes to be heard further on scheduling, Your Honor.
And I'll recognize that your lead victim witness person is in the courtroom, and she was indicating to you that nobody wished to as far as the victims to be heard today. Is
Yes,
that-
correct.
Attorney Keys, anything else?
No, Your Honor.
All right, so we have our date. We'll gather up again on that next court date back here for an arraignment. Unless there's anything further, we can be adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.